Welcome to our members only video series, where we interview a number of clients about the impact of shared ownership in their businesses. Come along to hear from owners and cooperators about their challenges and experiences. Well, welcome back to our series on the International Year of the Cooperative. I'm joined today by Eli Allen, the co-founder and studio director of Wild Blue Studios, one of our favorite cooperative clients. Eli, welcome today. Looks like it's sunny where you are as it is where I am. How are
Yeah,
you today?
sunny but blessedly cooling off. We're hitting the end of summer out here in the high desert, so I'm ready for some more mild temperatures. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate the accolade, and I'm glad we rank somewhere among the favorites. I'm sure you love all your children equally, but
Of
thank
course,
you,
of
thanks for
course.
having me on.
Well, let's get started on just kind of the backdrop here. As a co-founder, what inspired you to choose the cooperative model? And we'll get into kind of how that has evolved over time. But where did that journey start? And by lace in kind of who Wild Blue is and why the cooperative model is important to that story.
Yeah, absolutely. So Wild Blue Studios is a art services provider primarily for the video games industry, although we also cross over into TV and film and a couple other related areas. Which for the uninitiated means basically we are a cooperative of artists who sell our art services and the output of our time on the tablet to people who are developing entertainment products at all. So if you see pictures of characters from a video game that look particularly cool, if you see social media posts that have a piece of art related to the game, if you open a game and see icons and emotes and any little element that had to be drawn or painted around the game and its development, that is what we do. Why co-op? So my co-founder and I, Mitchell Malloy, who is my Sherpa in many regards to this, or really led me to water on this idea on a number of levels. He and I left our in-house jobs at a video game developer right around the same time, and got to talking about wanting to start a studio to do external development work, which is kind of the overarching industry term. Um, and there were a lot of key examples from the past of studios that had sort of broken ground or proven out that you could be an independent group of artists selling your services to multiple developers. But those groups tended to travel a very similar arc where they were founded by either one person or a very tight knit group of people who weren't necessarily business people, typically came from the craft background. And um, because of their not necessarily having strong affinity or skills or background in running a business, and because they owned the thing outright and were very personally attached to it in many ways, typically the arc that those studios would travel is that they would become very successful off the back of very strong craft offerings and working on iconic products, and then very quickly run themselves out over a cliff where management and workers, as the business tried to scale, would come in conflict with each other, and then very rapidly either collapse or be sold off in order to try to rectify that tension, and had very little longevity. Largely, a key element in almost all of them was friction between workers and ownership, which was privately held. So Mitch, who is a very experienced labor organizer, community organizer, he comes from a very strong organization background, and he was the one when we said like, hey, could we start a studio like this? And he was like, we should, and also I have this idea. There's this thing called a cooperative, and if we really want to gun for longevity and we really want to build a workplace where people want to stick around, especially because we were tremendously cash poor at the time, it also allowed us to offer co-ownership as part of the incentive to join in the nascent form of the co-op. So that's where we started. We just said, like, could this could this model work? Could we co-found this together and then open the door to our friends and people that we recruited in and trusted to be co-owners and run this thing in a way where management was accountable to labor, especially in a business where all we have to sell is the output of our labor. We're not working on a platform, a technology, a service, anything. It's just the fruit of the individual specific people working on something. We felt that it was right. We felt that it would proof us against what we saw as a pattern that laid low the companies that inspired us to start this in the first place. And we thought at the beginning, with very low expectations for size or longevity or anything, it was just, why not try it? And it turned out, in my opinion, to be a really great fit for this specific setup. So that's a long answer to a short question. But
Well, I have to imagine the backdrop for you and your fellow co-owners is one of low morale, burnout, work-related trauma. I have to imagine that that story is just pervasive among the people in your industry. And so the cooperative, if nothing else, provides a glimmer of hope. And I'd love to hear it. If is that your experience? Do you hear those kinds of stories? I know that I've heard it from others in the gaming industry and certainly other professional services. It's the same kind of pyramidal, arrangement where the people at the top make money off of all the people at the bottom. Is that true in your industry as well?
yeah, if you're just listening to the audio version, I am nodding vigorously through this entire question. Incredibly insightful, right? You know, I guess, I don't know an industry where that isn't the overall feeling, but certainly around the time of our founding, games as an industry was undergoing a shift away from this sort of I don't know, punk rock kind of, garage industry, and suddenly they were turning into, nine-figure, 10-figure companies, and really making headway into mainstream culture and becoming the culture in many ways. Size of companies were exploding, and all of those managerial issues you're talking that I talked about for specifically our model certainly extend across development landscape, where people who got in early and had varying backgrounds were suddenly at the helm of these gigantic companies, and there were all kinds of culture problems and all kinds of crunch was an accepted and even lionized practice. There was a huge influx and change in the gender ratio of employees in these companies that led to very, very public falling out and lawsuits and hundreds of millions of dollars of settlements across multiple organizations in order to have a real come to Jesus moment with the professionalization and diversification and massive scaling of the workforce there that was long overdue. And yeah, absolutely. We Most of the people who I think the average length of a career in the games industry is under 6 years. And people burn out, fall out, get pushed out, realize that it's not what they thought it was, pretty rapidly, and go somewhere else because it particularly at that time, I think it's getting better now, but particularly around the time of our foundership, that's when it was all kind of coming out that work conditions were pretty brutal. And yes, the co-op model offered incentive, especially because a lot of us were coming out of companies where lip service was given to, we are all responsible for the product. All voices are listened to equally, and we want you to feel like you have ownership and empowerment here. An empowered workforce. I was on an operations team when I was in-house, and a lot of the rhetoric was around empowering individuals and entrusting them to do stuff. And I think that that's awesome and commendable, but if it's not backed up in any sort of mechanical or certainly material way, at the end of the day, it's just a method of like better extracting people's labor or softly convincing them to do unpaid overtime at the at the very base root of it. So yeah, I think the co-op model being like, hey, you know all that stuff that people said at your last job, we actually back that up with you can fire your manager or or you get to vote on strategic decisions or the things that you catch and bring in you get the direct um, reward from and things like that. That really perk people's ears up, especially people who were super jaded, super disillusioned on the far end of that 6 year curve, and basically considering a lot of our core membership and a lot of the people, especially the earliest hires, were people who were like, I think I'm done trying to do this, right? And we were kind of their last stop on the way out, specifically because of that value prop. And they're like, oh, I can stay here and I do want to do this work as long as I'm actually benefiting from it and feel safe and in control of my workplace.
So you've already touched on a few in terms of the hopes and goals of launching as a cooperative. I'm hearing giving your fellow owners a sense of agency over the work, over the projects, creative, giving folks maybe a last ditch way to stay in the craft. What are some of the other guiding hopes and goals when you started the process?
I think our goals and aspirations at the beginning were limited to can we do this? Can we even stand this up? And I really think it was a process of catching the tiger by the tail and running with it. So a lot of the best things about the co-op are the original those underlying things, the things that I think everybody who's interested in the co-op space acknowledges as the primary benefits, which are all safety, control, agency, proper investiture, like all of these things. That those are the things that are immediately grokkable at the start and remain guiding lights all the way through. It's just the everything around it that's evolved. So we did an interview yesterday with a candidate, and they asked kind of a version of this question, which are like, what do you guys consider to be guiding principles? And it was great to hear from the other members in the call. But really, what it boils down to me is like everybody should come to work every day and feel safe, secure, and like they know what's going on or have the tools to to understand very quickly, and know who to ask for it, which I think is just like the way I described it to the in that interview was we treat everybody like adults for better or for worse. Sometimes it sucks to be an adult when you're co-owning a company, but for the most part, it's just about trust and safety.
I love that. Well, you kind of alluded to this. You started with maybe some modest goals when you got started, and it sounds like things evolved. What about becoming a cooperative surprised you, challenged you?
Mm.
And then I want to get into, beyond the formation stage, what surprised you. But at that stage, was there anything that surprised you or challenged you that you weren't maybe expecting?
Yeah. So just on a very personal career arc level, this is kind of a silly thing, but like I founded it thinking that uh I was going to be like executive creative director on the projects and I'd have my hands all over this specific aspect of it. But because my co-founder is a significantly stronger artist than I am, I very quickly kind of became what I lovingly refer to or derisively refer to as the business monkey. And I had to kind of like figure all that out from the ground up. And this forms the basis of, so I do a lot of people who become interested in the co-op model, and especially in the art and creatives services space, seek us out. And I've done a lot of calls with a lot of groups of people, most of whom mirror exactly our founding composition, which is people who are exiting in-house jobs. They're all coming out of the same discipline. And they say, hey, we want to keep doing what we're doing from the outside as a group, as a cooperative. And I'm like, great. Who's going to do the taxes? Who's going to keep you guys compliant? Who's going to do the invoicing? Who's going to do client services? All these things that we didn't have a plan for because we were completely naive, as many of the people who approach this are. And I think so when I say, how it surprised me was different challenge every day that forced me to radically recomposite my skill set, how I thought of my job, what my job was going to be, and what it has become. And I think the best thing I can do for people early on is shed light on that fact. I have like a talk I give to prospective co-op founders, and I call this problem "Oops, all one skill set." And you do need to like find people to supplement you, or identify who in the group naturally biases that way, and set them up and support them and set good expectations for them to transition into those leadership roles. As things have gone on, I actually find, and this is maybe will be funny to a certain subset of people in the co-op space, is the co-op value proposition to labor is extremely evident and appealing, and is great at, like we said, pulling people in, especially talent that you might not have been able to afford normally, or people value it in a really tangible way. And I find that people, newcomers to the co-op, new additions to the co-op, especially after being ratified as full members, love to touch every switch and knob and dial and open every book,
Yeah.
and for about 3 months, and then they typically interest in all the benefits that being a co-op member affords you craters just off a cliff. They don't want to think about it anymore, right? Cool to see it. Loved being able to kind of look at the internals of the thing, and they and then they had their fun, and now they would like to go back to doing their job, please.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of co-owners end up, and I think this is good, by the way. I think this is really good, because it prevents a too many cooks scenario, and there's all kinds of benefits from it. But people really check into the co-ownership aspect, and then they really check out after a certain amount of time. And I think that's what surprised me most is at the end of the day, I think, especially in a co-op like ours, where there's like really specific roles, at the end of the day, people mostly just want to go back to doing their job. So
There are qualities to the development of a cooperative that are intangible, and something we don't often talk about and measure, which is the process and quality of creating a trust container and an organization founded on trust. And so I've experienced that as well, in the cooperative sector and any shared ownership sector, where owners want to touch everything. They want to understand everything. It comes from a place of curiosity.
Mhm.
And in that process, they learn empathy for those who do those roles.
Yeah.
And then through realization that they trust the people in charge, that's what allows them to back away. And I wonder if that's what you experience. And as you said, you see it as a good thing. I see it as a good thing too, because you can't have everybody all the time scrutinizing every decision and every dial and every knob. You got to have people trusting those in charge to operate efficiently. Can you reflect a little bit on the process and quality of trust among your co-owners?
Absolutely. Okay, I think that's a great insight, and one that I had not developed for myself. Maybe I'm gonna transmute it into patting myself on the back as like,
Yeah, you should.
maybe I've done a good job of engendering that trust or earning that trust. But I really do, at the end of the day, view like, um, especially in a co-op, leadership as a service, right? Where you're there
Yeah.
in service of the membership and of the people who perform the functions that allow you to keep the lights on. So I think that that's a guiding principle that behooves everyone in any type of organization. But I really, when I talk to co-ops and stuff, leadership, I believe, is constantly auditioning for their role, right? And earning that trust. And so I think, yeah, I can definitely imagine a world where if new co-ownership comes in and they do pull the cover off of the thing and kick the tires, like you're saying, and find that they are not happy with how it's being administered, or they don't trust the people who are accorded the extra administrative roles, and then also some of the privileges and expanded responsibilities that come with that. I could definitely imagine a world where, I mean, trust breakdown would absolutely tank the whole thing. But I think the beauty of the co-op model, and like, again, kind of going back to like why we tried it in the first place, is I firmly think that if the leadership breaks trust with the membership doesn't believe that leadership is operating in their best interest, or is flagrantly disregarding them in some way. Like the beauty of the co-op model at its core is that they can do something about that.
Yeah.
They don't just get dragged down with somebody who decides to steer it off a cliff or has a personal meltdown or a personal problem or something that people change in all kinds of surprising ways, personally and professionally. And I think that yeah, it operates on trust, but it gives a
Yeah.
mechanism of enforcement. So
Yeah, I love that. I like to think that the cooperative model at its best both provides the conditions for trust to develop and also the safeguards
mhm.
when it falls apart.
Yeah,
And you need both. You can't
yeah.
have one really without the other to be functional. And so, kudos really for building that culture. I'm curious to know what the client experience, what other stakeholders
Uh,
do you know of are positively impacted by your structure as a cooperative?
I think this is really a fun question for us specifically because we are a client services organization. All our revenue comes from value proposition to client, right? 100% of our survival depends on it. And going back to things that surprised me at the beginning of our life cycle, we flogged the co-op model super hard as a differentiator. All that stuff means next to nothing, as a pitch to the overwhelming majority of clients. At the end of the day, they're like, "Cool, I'm not paying extra for that." Right? That sounds really great for you, bully for you guys, right? Or actually, the most common question is a what? So I think early on, I learned that it was not necessarily something that rolls into the sales pitch, but what it does do is it creates an atmosphere and an attitude and a set of conditions that result in a superior client experience.
Mm.
Especially in outsource, the number one thing that our clients flog as why outsource relationships fail is uh, they will go to a vendor who has like this, some portfolio that matches their needs, and they see all the best stuff at the portfolio, and they get the sales pitch, and then they do a test or a first batch of work, and the A team gets put on that within a service provider, which can be either the best people in the studio or people that they specifically bring in as contractors in order to ace the test, and then those people go away, right? Either because they were never employees in the first place, or they just get shuttled to the next test. And then the B and C and D teams rotate onto the product, and service quality degrades, and then they can't find the person that they were talking to initially, and they don't know who's doing what. The way it actually nets out into the co-op model actually nets out into like solving that issue for clients, and why we have such strong client longevity and good relationships is because it's the same people every time, right? I think we have like a averaged across 7.5 years, we had like a 2.5% attrition rate, right? Like I think only 3 people have ever left the co-op of their own accord, in 8 years. And I'm really proud of that statistic because the same people that you start the relationship with are the ones who are going to be there every day, every week. And we've actually had a lot of our membership grow into like embedded director
Oh,
roles or
wow.
senior roles with clients because they enmesh so tightly and learn the ropes and develop such strong relationships there that they basically earn their way into the hierarchy at clients. And I know that that's as a result of co-op retention and culture, and but that's a very difficult thing to get across in, like I said, the sales pitch, or to explain to people, because they may hear it and they may sort of be like, oh, that sounds cool, but you just don't know the difference until you're in it.
Yeah, yeah, proof's in the pudding for
Yeah.
sure. But the outcomes are really impressive, really important. I've got two more questions here for you. One is to reflect on your experience working with kind of lawyers generally
Hmm.
and JWPC specifically. Maybe reflect on what that was like. What did you wish you knew at the time that you started working with attorneys? What, if anything, about our firm's principles and values did you experience in that work?
Yeah.
Um, Pick
I
up on any
mean,
of those.
like I said, when I talk to potential co-op founders, one part of the thing I confront them with is who on your end is going to do the business side, and then I say, who's your lawyer, who's your accountant, right? Because nobody, you don't have, you're not going to have one full time internally, for many, many years, 90% of the time, if you ever hit that size. And so I think we got so lucky finding you guys. I mean, you were instrumental in helping us. So for reference, we were founded as an LLC with cooperative like bylaws and I call it cooperative software on a different corporate hardware, and then reincorporated as a Colorado cooperative corporation, a mini C's there, under your guys' guidance and auspices. Just finding a law firm that uh, could actually explain things to us about the cooperative space rather than us clearing brush and figuring it all out by braille and research and all our own stuff, that you guys not only understood from the jump but had your own extant expertise and stuff. I mean, I couldn't imagine if anybody was working in a cooperative way. I couldn't imagine recommending any other firm because of that advantage, especially because everybody who starts a co-op is typically doing it for the first time.
Mhm.
Um, and then just the same way that I was describing, like why is our service experience differentiated to our clients? Same deal the other direction, right? You guys is like the cooperative principles, the cooperative organization means that we have a continuous and long running relationship with the people at the firm. We've seen people in the firm grow into all these cool other roles and stuff over time. And yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't even I don't even think about other options because we don't need or want them. So yeah, I think hopefully have referred in as much as I possibly can to y'all, because it's definitely the first thing I do when I talk to people who are founding.
Well, we so appreciate that vote of confidence and glad to hear that that alignment has been valuable to you.
Yeah.
My last question is reflecting on this 2025 being the International Year of the Cooperative. What sort of message do you have from your experience and Wild Blue's experience to comment on how the cooperative model can help to build a more inclusive, just economy, community? What sort of beacon of hope, if any, does your experience portend for the broader movement?
I am really enthusiastic and um proactively advocating for the growth of cooperative foundership, especially in new economic realities, right? I think we're seeing markets and industries and the overall, maybe entire financial structure shift in a way where the the makeup of companies and organizations is becoming extremely polarized. And I think that co-ops are an incredible mechanism and container for people. I mean, I always talk about it as if you have a smaller number of resources spread across a greater number of people who are highly ideologically and task aligned, then the co-op is the right way to go. And I think that as these companies that have super aggregated entire sections of the workforce for the better part of a decade start to shed large portions of that workforce and release them back into the labor force with not a lot of direction. There's a lot of expertise, a lot of alignment, and a lot of relationships out there that can coalesce into incredibly viable, sustainable, and disruptive (parentheses positive) companies under the co-op model. So I think it's not right for every group of people. It's not right for every company, but for the ones that it is so right, and it is really typically just about the information barrier, the knowledge barrier, knowing that it's an option, knowing what it is, and having the courage to found in a different way and take on this thing. So that's the drum I'm beating for sure. We are in a moment that is so ripe for the expansion of the model and just an explosion of cooperative foundership that I hope to hope to yell loudly enough to get some people to take notice.
Well, I'm leaving inspired. Eli, co-founder, studio director of Wild Blue, where can viewers, listeners find out more about Wild Blue, your services, your story?
Yeah. First stop would be wildbluestudios.art. That's our core website. There's a contact form on there where if you have questions, comments, or just want to, especially if you're looking for guidance or things like that, hit us up through that contact form, and I will respond ASAP. And if you're a video game company looking for pretty pictures, which I think is probably 0.0001% of the listenership here, but might as well take the chance. That's certainly where you can find our portfolio, and we'd love to help out on whatever you're building. But yeah, I really do hope, and why I love doing these types of things is I really eagerly look forward to people reaching out with really any kind of clarification, any kind of interest, because I love talking about this.
Well, that's evident. Eli, thank you so much for being an ambassador to the cooperative movement, speaking from real experience. It's a real inspiring story. So I appreciate you and your time.
Thank you so much for having us on. And again, thank you for everything your firm has done for us as an organization and as a group. Irreplaceable, invaluable, and looking forward to a lot more to come. So.